Hey guys, back with a new video here. I know it's been a few weeks now, but yeah, just had this idea of something that will help you guys hopefully get ready for the upcoming standard rotation, which is probably going to be in a couple of weeks now. So here are what I think the most notable cards that are going to be leaving standard. And I'll try to give you ideas of what could be suitable replacements for most of these cards. I won't have them for all of them, but um, I think this won't be that scary of a rotation. I feel like there are a lot of cards that I think we have cards that are as good or work even better than a lot of the cards that are leaving here. So this is going to go, I'm going to go masterpiece down and color alphabetically. So we're going to start with masterpieces in black. And this is the only black masterpiece I could see that had some sort of use. I never used it. I can see why it was cool, but it's not something that it's going to make a big deal one way or the other if you use it or not. I don't see it very often used in normal play anyway. So we can just say bye to this one. Next is Blue Masterpieces, Echo Mage. And so this one, it's a good spell enabler. When you cast a spell for the first time each turn, copy that card. Card gains X mana, X is equal to this card's level. So really good card. I unfortunately never was able to get it, yet at least. But I think Jin-Gitaxias is a rare in Neo that I think will be a decent replacement for that. Manifold Insights, another really good card I wish I got. Um, I mean, there's no really good equivalent to this in Standard, at least for now, but I would say you can replace it with Time Reversal and or Broker's Charm. Next is Predator Ooze, not a card I ever owned either, and it's a decent card. Pretty cheap casting card, but I think that Consuming Blob from, I think it's Val, is a pretty good replacement for, it might be Midnight Hunt, but Vengevine. This was a really fun card. My first masterpiece I got after coming back to the game from a 2-year break. And yeah, this card grows really quickly and it's haste. So I think that the best equivalent to this would be Gaia's Revenge, which is, of course, an Origins Mythic. So I think a lot of you have it. And I don't know, I don't see Gaia's Revenge or Vengevine used that often these days in Platinum, at least. But both really good cards. So Breaches, Brazen Plunderer. When this creature deals combat damage to your opponent's planeswalker, move the top 2 cards of each player's library into your graveyard. Then pick one of the first 4 cards from your graveyard, fetch that card, and exile the others. That card gains half its mana. If not invoked, when this creature attacks, this creature gains double strike until end of turn. Another masterpiece I was never able to grab. Quite good, but I think Jaleva, which is in standard right now, is probably better overall. Um, yeah, I would say it is better overall. So won't be missed too much. Plus, it's also Jaleva's tricolored, so probably won't be using this card in Legacy. Jaleva will probably get more Legacy play once it rotates. Fiendslayer Paladin. When this creature deals combat damage, venture into the dungeon, and as long as there are 10 or more black or red gems, this creature gains double strike. I didn't have a great equivalent to this, but it's lifelink, vigilance, and first strike. So Faithbound Judge is probably the closest thing to this card. Um, you know, Faithbound Judge has a lot of amazing other abilities with it as well. So I don't think you'll be missing Fiendslayer Paladin that much if you have Faithbound Judge. And then Colorless, Sword of Dungeons and Dragons. Um, there's not really anything in standard that I would equate this to. This is just a really good um, artifact equipment. Does a lot of different things. Creates an adult gold dragon. Uh, reinforce your dragon creatures, or perform all the effects above. So this card gets crazy out of control. Oh yeah, you get 4/4 and hexproof as well, which is probably why most people use it. But this card will easily help you win games if it's on your side, and you can. I've lost some games due to this card, so nothing I could compare it to in standard right now, but maybe we'll get something later. And then multicolor cards. The Dragon. Really good dragon, one of the best in the game, and the closest thing in standard that we will have because of the drawing card and gaining X mana equal to the combat damage dealt to your opponent. The closest thing to that to me is Zayator's Envoy, which is a rare, and it only does it once per turn, but it does 3 times the mana gain. So you lose a lot by not being able to cast dragons so easily, but we're losing most of the good dragons in standard anyway. And Erixmith this. This is probably the masterpiece I will miss the most in standard. And there's really nothing that equates to it. Maybe like 3 of the PMA lands might equal 1 Erixmith this, but you also don't get that awesome +12/+12 in Defender. And this card is just so good at converting gems. It does so much for you, and I will totally miss it. Okay, let's move on to the Mythics. We got Westgate Regent in black. I can't really think of anything that I would equate this one to. Really strong card. I don't see it in play very often anymore, but I think it's just because it doesn't do a lot to help you meet any objectives. It's just a good, strong creature for black to have. Vorpal Sword. Um, the main reason to use this one is to get that loyalty gain. So I'll miss it. I think it's a good card that I got pretty late in standard rotation, but it's solid. You get 6 +6 and to your power in Death Touch. And next, Haunting Voyage was a card I really like, especially now that Angel of Suffering is in the game. So get a ton of stuff in your graveyard, and you get to pull 2 of 4 different creature cards from your graveyard. And if you foretell it, 3 of 4 different creature cards from your graveyard, and they come into play with their reinforcement. So, this is just a standard reanimation spell, but it's very good. And I would say that there's a lot of ones in standard right now. There's the classic from Origins, Dark Petition, but also Diagraph Rebirth and Dig Up the Body. None of which are as good as this card, but it is replaceable. Allrun's Epiphany, mostly getting 2 extra swaps, or just the normal way, getting an extra swap with the 4 bird tokens. But Temporal Mastery is a good replacement for that. It's just a gain a swap spell. Seagate Restoration. It's not so much for the card draw, although that is nice too. Uh, but it's also the gaining loyalty if you have a lot of cards in your hand already, which is pretty cool. And then the land forming token, which we will all miss land forming, won't we? I think the Seagate Reborn token bumps up your mana bonus, and it converts 3 gems to blue. So that's pretty great. Old Gnawbone, the token, the gold token generator, supreme. There's really not going to be much of anything that can create gold tokens quite so easily as Old Gnawbone. It's just an amazing card. But the probably the best gold generators are going to be the Gala Greeters and Black Market Tycoon, which are both from SNC, and they're okay. They're going to be nowhere near as good as Old Gnawbone. Ancient Green Warden, uh, kind of an underrated card. At the beginning of combat on your turn, return the first land support from your graveyard to the board under your control. That already is good. But when a land support enters the board under your control, convert 6 gems to your Planeswalker's colors. So this is a great card for Ren and 7. And the closest thing that I could equate it to in standard, but they work quite differently, but they have a similar ability to um, do really well for you, is Cultivator Colossus. Ochre Jelly. When this creature enters the battlefield, this is just one of those ones that has stored mana, so it grows that way. But when it dies, create a copy of this card under the battlefield under your control. So it's one of those ones that come back to life after destruction. And the closest thing I could think of those is Consuming Blob and Despoiler, but they're pretty different from each other. Turn Timber Symbiosis, also an awesome card. Pick 4 of the first different creature cards from your library, move that card into play under your control, which is already nice. Then if that creature's base cost is 11 or less, it gets +6/+6. So that's a reason you would want to spend that much mana to cast a creature that costs 11 or less. But also the Turn Timber token from Landforming is great too. I think it raises your green bonus by 2 and converts 3 gems to blue or green every turn. Did I say green for mana bonuses? But that's what I meant. Verdant Mastery. Fetch the first 3 different land sports from your library and then convert X gems to green. So that green gem conversion is really cool, but the enhancement drawback is really annoying because a lot of times you don't want to give your opponent just free lands. So you got to figure out ways to mitigate that. But Verdant Mastery is okay. I like the gem conversion, but that heavy drawback on it made me not use it that often. But and then also you need lands in your deck to be able to trigger this. And the closest thing I could think of in standard is Animist Awakening. Maybe we'll get more green gem conversion in the next sets, but I'm not counting too much on it. They don't seem to really like heavy green gem conversion in this game anymore. All right, in red, we got Inferno of the Star Mounts and Efreet Flame Painter. But Inferno of the Star Mouse, just a strong dragon that can, when reinforced, do a lot of damage, double strike and trample. So that's already, if you get it to 16 or greater, that's at least 32 damage that you're doing with it. So it's just a strong red card. But, we'll have strong red creatures in the game for years to come, I'm sure. Efreet Flame Painter, closest thing that I could think of will be Jaleva, because it can pull spells out for free. But I really like Efreet Flame Painter. Create a copy of the spell in your hand, it gains full mana. So yeah, it can pull spells out of your graveyard and make you able to cast them on your next turn. Jaleva has a similar effect. Flame Skull. This was a decent creature. When this creature dies, you may exile it, and if you do, discard a card, create a copy of Flame Skull in your hand. So theoretically, this card would never leave play in some form. But yeah, pretty good card. Not a card I relied on heavily, but it was good for Zendikar Expeditions. And then Delina Wild Mage, another card I never got. but I do like it. Um, Reinforce target creature you control until end of turn. Reinforce target creature you control and roll a d20. Then reinforce the first two creatures you control, then roll a d20. So it could really help your creatures grow quickly. And I see it used more often than I ever did before. So I'm wondering if just people took a while to grab it. And then Shatter Skull Smashing. One of Red's actually good damage spells because it does a decent amount of damage, well, actually pretty good amount of damage divided across your entire opponent board. And this was a card I chased a while and I still haven't gotten it. And then there's the land forming spell. So this was a great card for mono red. And with it leaving standard, it makes cost that much worse. And Zariel and other mono red planeswalkers will be um, I think they will all feel the absence of this card in standard. All right, Angel of Destiny, one of the best creatures in the game, I think, and I think it will get legacy play. And while on the battlefield, all creatures gain life. So that's the one thing that um, makes it not just a auto win right away, although it's as close to an auto win as a creature that we've had in standard in a really long time. At the end of your turn, if you have full life, your opponent's planeswalker loses half their life, round it up. So, great card for speeding through training grounds and defeating many bosses very quickly. Next, we got Dancing Sword, another really good sword that's going out of standard. Your first creature gets +4/+2 and double strike. That's already awesome. When your first creature dies, you may exile the support, and if you do, return the first creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield under your control. The creature's base power and toughness is increased by +4/+2. Then that creature gains double strike and flying and gains the construct's subtype. So it's a gift that keeps on giving. And I don't think there's anything in standard that's even close to that. As with Sword of the Realms, which is a card I still use plenty. On the board, your first creature gains +6/+2 and vigilance. And when your first creature dies, you may return that creature to your hand. It gains half its mana. A card I really like with a Johnny, and I think I use it with Grandmaster of Flowers a decent amount as well. But yeah, just a really solid card. And the closest thing I could think of that did anything close to everything that we get here is Mech Titan Core, but that's a terrible card, and I don't recommend you use that as a replacement for these two swords. And Conqueror's Pledge, really good token generator, create 9 core tokens, and Kicker 13, create 18 core tokens instead. So, really good spell just to create a lot of tokens. I would say that Rabble Rousing is a decent replacement for it. It's not going to have like the same impact right when you cast it, but Rabble Rousing, those tokens grow really quickly. Colorless, we got the World Tree. At the beginning of your turn, convert 3 gems to green, and then if you control 3 or more land supports, convert 2 gems to your planeswalkers' colors. I never really pay attention to the bottom part of the card, so I'll just skip reading that. But the World Tree was really good for mono green, especially if you're using a lot of lands, which these days I don't use a lot of lands, so the World Tree, when I first got it, until I had a Rixmithis, it was going into most of my decks that had a green planeswalker for. But now with the Rixmithis, and the World Tree rotating out of standard, I'll be inclined to use lands that much less. Strixhaven Stadium, I think most people who played this card was for the 30 loyalty, and there were some really cool uses I saw of this card, and there's not really anything that I would equate it to. Door to Nothingness, which is a colorless PMA card, is probably the closest thing to being able to get that much loyalty out of a colorless support. But that card is just okay. And then Skyclave Relic. Activate to convert 2 gems to your Planeswalker's colors. And when you cast this card, create 2 copies of Skyclave Relic on the board under your control. So this can be a really good card. There's nothing quite as good, but Secluded Courtyard creates 2 or converts 2 gems to your Planeswalker's colors, and that will probably be, and that's just an uncommon. So it'll probably get a decent amount of usefulness compared to Skyclave Relic if this is a card you use. Next, okay, so our multicolored mythics is probably going to be where we'll miss the most in these cards rotating out of standard. So we got Phylath, which is such a good card, such a good creature. I think you probably see it in Legacy even. The Tarask, it's a card I never got, but it's a pretty strong card. When you cast this card, it gains haste and ward, drain 10 mana from hand, then disable your opponent's creatures until end of turn. Just kind of a strong beatdown creature. Takes 30 mana to cast, but I feel like a lot of people don't actually pay 30 mana for that to hard cast this creature. Coma, really good card. The bug always stayed, which made it even better. But at the beginning of each player's turn, populate 2 times. That right there is worth the usage for it. But then the fact that if you have a token on the board, you can just perma disable your creature, your opponent's creature, as long as it's on the board, makes it just really killer, and kind of not as used as some of the other strong creatures in the game right now. But if you're using a lot of tokens, this one is definitely going to suck to see not in standard anymore. Then Tanazir, perfect companion to Phylath, but really any token generator just makes you pretty much insta win if you have at least haste or something on Tanazir. But yeah, another really strong dragon. Tiamat, enabler of dragons. I will not miss seeing this card played against me so very often, because it just, not only is it a good dragon on its own, it's got leader dragon, and it helps you get all the rest of your dragons on the board. So that's rough to deal with, and I will be happy to see it go. Velomachus, this is not one I'll be happy to see go, because it's still one of my most used cards. When this creature attacks, pick one of the first 4 different spell cards from your library, fetch that card, gains X mana. So being able to fetch whatever spell you need and filling it up with mana so that you can use it on your next turn is just such a invaluable effect for a creature to have. And Jaleva will probably be the closest thing to being able to replace it. They work a little differently, but the effect is close to the same in that regard. Drizzt, another card I never got, but pretty strong card. If you let it stay on the board, it's pretty strong because not only does it create 2 pretty powerful creatures, but if you let it stay on the board, either one of them can wreak havoc on both your life and your creatures' lives. So this is a card that I think a lot of people will miss. Zerasan the Trickster. God, yeah, just really strong card because not only can it take your best cards and use them against you, but it's got haste and well, really, that's really what it is. It's got haste and flash, and as soon as it hits the board, as long as there's something in your grave, you can start stealing your stuff and using it against you. So it's a card I got relatively late in this standard block here, but it's a card that is really strong and can really make life hard for you if you don't get rid of it. Oboon. One of my favorites. This one was more of an earlier grab for me. I love this card. It gives your first other creature haste and trample, and plus X being the power of the elf. So if you really pump up this elf, you can get a lot of damage going really quickly. So landfall, target creature you control gets +1/+1, and that's not like the greatest part of it, but it's really just giving haste and really buffing up another creature yours is why I like this card, and it's tricolor, so there's a lot of ways to get it out. And it can go in a lot of decks. Minsk. When this creature enters the battlefield, create a boo token. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you may drain all the mana from your hand. So this is a card that really helps with it's a cheap card too for 11 mana, but yeah, that if you have a way to keep your hand filled with mana all the time, mints can really help you win games quickly. There's a lot of strategies for that. So, at least with the adversaries around, we have some equivalent of that. I think Primal Adversary is probably my favorite adversary to use, but you could also use, Intrepid Adversary, and it's only a one-time effect. Whereas with Minsk, you can trigger it turn after turn, but a lot of those other cards that effect is permanent. So um, this will be a tough one to see go, but at the same time, there are a lot of replacements for it that have a similar effect. The Prismatic Bridge. This one I will miss a lot because it's such an enabler. These are the types of cards that I really um, live off of. It's these enablers of so much more in your deck, gets things out on the board for free for you every turn. And the Herald, the Essica God of the Tree, that creature is not bad. It's a 4/7 with vigilance, so it can be a decent blocker if you grow it. And then the gem conversion to your Planeswalker's color is also pretty nice too. So just so much utility in one card, a really strong card, and I guess Meeting of the Five is probably the best thing in Standard once this rotates. As far as getting a bunch of things out on the board, it's just that Meeting of the Five is a one-time effect, and it gets more out at a time, but Prismatic Bridge will just continuously bring things to the board for you. So you will be missed, Prismatic Bridge. Another one that will be missed, Dak Faden. Gain control of target opposing creature until end of turn. So that right now we're having a lot of fun with the casualty cards, stealing cards stealing creatures, using casualty on them, but also the card draw and mana gain on those drawn cards. I don't have that part of it on here, but yeah, you discard a card, draw two, gain mana equal to twice this card's shield count is basically how that goes. So card can do a lot for you. It's one of the more annoying cards to go up against. So it's a Vanguard too, so it's not that easily taken care of. But yeah, I got this card pretty late. Took me a long time to to chase it and finally getting it, and I use it a lot now, and I see why. Awaken the Blood Avatar. It's a decent spell. I don't know. There's a lot of different things that can replace it. Like Invoke Despair is one of my favorite removal cards right now in Standard. So I don't use Awaken the Blood Avatar that much. There's just things I kind of like about it. That Blood Avatar token has haste, so you're doing extra damage along with the creature removal that this card does, and it's untargeted removal, which is always good. Body of Research. This was a really strong card I got right in the beginning of Strixhaven, and it's an amazing card because create a fractal token, then increase its level by X. X is the total number of non-token, non-copy cards in your hand, graveyard, exile, and play under your control. So it's just tailor-made for Jaleva, which just totally fills up your exile, and also great card for Angel of Suffering. So there will be things to to replace that amount of damage. Unlicensed Hearse is the one I'm thinking of, comes to mind. But yeah, Body Research, I think we'll probably see some play in Legacy over the life of this game because there's a lot of ways to fill up your graveyard in Legacy sets. So, and your exile if you want to think of it that way too. But yeah, really solid game finisher. Magma Opus, a really nice utility card. It does a lot for you. Deal 12 damage, divide equally upon opposing target, disable each opposing creature, and then draw 2 cards, and those 2 cards gain half their mana. So all 3 of those things are great reasons to use Magma Opus. But all 3 together, that makes for a really solid card. So Magma Opus was kind of a pseudo replacement for Ruinous Ultimatum. That's kind of how I used it. But also the drawing 2 cards helps with wizard class decks to make sure that you're doing damage as well as keeping your wizard class loot going. And Harness Infinity. Really unique card, so there's nothing really that I would equate it to. But each of the first 6 different cards without buried in your graveyard gain buried X. X is this card's base mana cost. Discard your hand for each card discarded this way. Each card buried in your graveyard gains 3 mana. So the way this card works is if you have a lot of things in your graveyard, you need to fill up your graveyard in some way first, or use a lot of buried cards. So whenever you cast this card, there's a lot of steps you have to take to make this card useful, but it's a unique card. I think we'll probably see Legacy play. We'll see. But it's not a card I used a lot, but I know a lot of people really like this card. It was a card that I got pretty late in the game. So I feel like when it was newer, a lot of people were playing it more, but I don't know, it's kind of a pain to use sometimes. So I know a lot of people will miss this card for various reasons, but it's just okay to me. Didn't do what I was hoping it would do for me. And yeah, all right. That is our mythics. On to the rares.